How you doing, YouTube? It's just James. Uh, Next video. Be honest, I was kind of hesitant about making it because, as all my videos are always off the top of my head, and just being honest and upfront. But this one, I know it's on everybody's mind. At least if you're black or Latino or someone who is not a Caucasian American. There's some concerns right now if you've been paying attention. I would say for the vast majority of us. A lot of it has been the executive orders that Trump has signed, like removing protections against workplace discrimination, his executive order banning, equality in the hiring practices of companies, um, let alone all the other stuff he did for DEI and all this other stuff. Um, this should be a wake up call to us. For too long, we've been divided, hating amongst each other, and ourselves vying for some weird top spot when you're talking about black people and people of color. Hell, we could see during this campaign how a lot of non-black people of color were very supportive of Trump, especially Latino people. I'm not against Latino people, Asian people. I'm not against anyone, actually. I'm only against people who are against me and my kind. If you want to live peacefully, if you are fine with living in fairness and injustice with other people, then that's just fine. Live your life, and I'm fine with that. But if you're out here doing this and you're fine with, you know, ending birthright citizenship, you're fine with ending protections against discrimination at work for minorities and people of color, if you're fine with ending equality in hiring, well, guess what? You got your wish. But I wonder if you're aware that it also affects you. I don't think a lot of white people, white women in general, I don't think y'all realize that getting rid of affirmative action harms you more than it harms us because the sole beneficiaries of affirmative action has mostly been white women. Um, so prepare for that. Prepare for having a hard time moving up in companies as a woman when we've had a lot of women in managerial positions and positions of leadership. Now, do I think every company is going to automatically stop hiring women and people of color, minorities, or black folks? Initially, no. Some companies, very much so. Some companies are so ingrained into their racism, systemic hatred, that the thought of this has already initiated them canceling out hiring anyone that isn't white. Now, that's a small group, but as this continues, I'm sure that number will grow. What concerns me is for people who are already been working, who are already established careers, or who have been in positions for a long time. And this is pretty much their life bread. They work, they put in the time, and they've earned it. And now we're probably going to face some things. Now, I'll say this: it's only been about a week since this man has taken office, so, and I can't speak for the whole world. I can speak for myself. I haven't experienced anything like that, but there's a definite concern when you know these protections aren't there. We understand with human nature that the worst of us comes out when there's nothing to keep it in check. Hence why capitalism is going the way it is, because nothing's there to keep it in check. The worst of it comes out. Um, and that's concerning. What do we do from here? Now, I'll be honest, I don't know. I'm a regular dude. I'm a blue collar worker. Um, my ideas are pretty much the same as a lot of other people's. Unity, coming together, community, coalitions. And I'll say this, and I'm saying this saying that I know very little about this. I just understand that in order to combat such a thing, we need people to come together. Now, what's concerning to me is, and I understand where it comes from, at least on YouTube. I'll be honest, I don't really mess around with too much other social media. I kind of got away from social media couple years ago because I realized it wasn't making me any happier or any better. I understand a lot of people have become very wealthy on there, but I feel like the vast majority of people who become the most successful and wealthy on there aren't really creating anything other than some lowbrow, low hanging fruit entertainment. There are people creating lots and lots of quality entertainment, quality information. There are people out there who are genuinely trying to uplift and trying to build and do things good, not just for themselves, but for the broader whole of humanity and America. But they aren't getting the push the same way as the lowbrow entertainers, the people who are doing the most to get the most attention, the people that'll say and do anything to get the most attention. I'm not gonna call out any names on this. There are a couple, at least as far as like black entertainers that I watch, that I don't think they understand that in the chase of the bag, which I understand money's important. It is definitely important now because the more you have, I would say, at least for right now, it's kind of a buffer from what's coming if you have enough. But if you don't, it's going to be problematic. Um, but they're chasing money and selling their whole communities out to do. Um, Over the past decade or more, I don't know about anybody else, but I noticed a real shift. And I would say it started more before 2010. I would say this kind of started more around 2008, 2009. There was a definite shift in, the rhetoric online, what was going on. And I know I'm kind of going back in the past, but I think the problem with what we're facing today is because people forgot the past, because people ignored the past and thought that, shit was going to be good. We could just coast because relatively for a long time, what America was doing to other people, they weren't as overtly doing it to us, at least not every one of us. Black folks were definitely experiencing it, and I'll be honest, black folks wasn't experiencing it everywhere. Certain areas, black folks were experiencing it, and usually those are the areas that had the most violence and crime. And some people will say, well, it's just the black folks, but I would say it's a combination of things: low income, low education, racism, lack of opportunity, and a concentration of violence. So if you weren't in those particular areas, especially if you were a black person, or if you were a black person who was fortunate enough to be born and raised up in an affluent family, you probably didn't experience all of that crazy shit that a lot of black people do experience. And there was a disconnect there. So you got these influencers now who found this way to make money. Not saying some of them didn't earn it, they definitely put in the work. But the way you went about it, because you were not connected to what was going on with your whole community, kind of set yourself up for failure. Because here's what happens, at least from what I see. They take these creators. I don't think they're initially racist or internally hating. I think that they are disconnected from the whole of blackness because they've come up affluently. And I know this because as a kid, um, my family for a while when I was very young was relatively well to do. So when I was going to school, my elementary school was in a more white neighborhood. I remember going to school, and when I started the school, I was one of a handful of black kids. And as time progressed, more black kids came in. I've I've pretty much lived alongside, and I'll say this for most black people, we've lived alongside white people. It's just how much proximity you have to them usually came down to how much wealth we had. As a young child, I was fortunate my father ran a business. He was very successful, so I got to live very close to white folks. I grew up with some friends of mine who were white, very close people, very good people. So I know that all white people are not racist, but I also understood that there was two sides to that coin. Half weren't, half were. And I would say around the half that weren't, half of that truly weren't. As in, they truly were looking at black people as equal and as no different. The other half, I would say, it wasn't so much the kind of racism you expect, like all black people were bad or heavy dropping the N word and all this other stuff, but an air of superiority. They were like, yeah, you're free and you're a person and I can respect you, but by nature of my blood and the color of my skin, I see myself as better as everyone that's under me. They would respect you if you had money or power or influence, but at the same time, there was always an air of superiority to how they talked to you. I know there is, and I guess I'm going all over the place because, like I said, I'll be talking off my head on these things. I want to be honest. I know there's maybe something that works better on TikTok, but I didn't get TikTok. I figured if I'm gonna start a YouTube channel, it's got to be just me. It's got to be honest. But anyway, the reason I'm saying all this is because we've been warned, and people have been warning us. We've been warning ourselves, and people in our community have been warning us that this day very well could come again. I don't know how many black people are aware that to vote as an African American or as a black person, however you want to call it, that has to be renewed. I want to say if I'm correct, every 10 to 20 years by our government. No other race in this country experiences that. So if you're Asian or you're Latino or any other race that comes to this country and you're a citizen and become a naturalized citizen, or you were born here as a naturalized citizen, even though you weren't white, your right to vote is built into the DNA of the Constitution. You don't have to worry about it being revoked at any period of time. There was never a vote that comes up. But as black folks, um, when they gave us our civil rights through the Civil Rights Amendment, that was baked in. And the reason they did that, I would speculate, is because they never wanted to see us as whole citizens to begin with. At least the people in power, which tends to be where most of the racism is consolidated, at least the most of it that can do the most damage and is the most effective against black folks and minorities as a whole, tends to be in positions of power, which is problematic in itself. So we came here as slaves, or brought here as slaves, if you were what I guess what people are calling foundational black Americans. Now, I don't consider myself that. Yes, I was born in America, but my family came from the Caribbean. Um, Trinidad and Tobago. And Trinidad and Tobago originally was a colony of England. Obviously, by understanding the history and how the Caribbean works, that the people that lived there were all slaves at one point if you were black. Um, but after them getting their independence and all this other stuff, Trinidad and Tobago kind of became more buddy buddy with America and the rest of the world than it was with England. How do you know? Because a lot of Trinidadians migrated here instead of England. Jamaicans, I would say, more migrated to England than here. But at the end of the day, what happens is this is just a continuation of things that's been going on since the inception of this country. And a lot of people say they are afraid of us retaliating, or they're jealous of us. And I can see where that comes from because I've experienced it on an interpersonal level. People just hating on me because they perceive me as better than them, or feeling insecure because they perceive me as being better than them and having more than they should have, or having something that they believe they should have themselves. And I'm not super wealthy. I'm not super influential. Like I said, I'm a blue collar, regular dude who likes to understand the world that he's living in. I'm not any political leader. I'm not in any position of political power. I'm not wealthy enough to make laws or take things from anyone else. I live in a predominantly conservative area, predominantly white. There are black people, Latin people, Asian people that live here, but this place is very conservative and very white. Now, before this, really wasn't a problem for me. I'll be honest. I had experienced some racism. I've been able to deal with that, but nothing overtly life threatening or overtly dangerous. Now, I've had some situations that if I didn't handle them, they probably could have went that way, especially dealing with police. Thankfully, they didn't go that way. But what concerns me is you've taken away anything that's DI related, and you've made DI a boogeyman, which it is not. They've taken away any type of protections for discrimination in the workplace as far as hiring and as far as people working there. You've taken away affirmative action primarily to hurt black folks, but it really will hurt white women first before it hurts black people. How long before you take away our rights to vote? Now, I understand a lot of people don't care about the vote. I understand that's a controversial topic for a lot of black people because we feel like our votes don't matter. But it is clear by this last election that our votes do matter because there was such a larger outturning of black folks, even though it was a marginal amount, less than 20% of us went that route. Um, they saw that as we can get them to vote for us, but if they all unify and vote against us, we don't win. So, how long before they take away our rights to vote? And I pose that question because I think it's a legitimate question in the climate that we're in and what has already been done. And I know some people are talking about it, but you don't hear too much talk about it. And that bothers me because that is kind of integral. They put a freeze on any regulations. They've literally frozen the ability for regulations to go in place. They've literally explicitly said they've frozen the ability for any regulations to go into place until they have full control of the government. And if that doesn't raise any type of hears or red flags, or the spider sense of anyone out there is not going off with things like that, then you're asleep at the wheel. And I'm not trying to insult because let's be honest, we didn't really see it coming. And I'll be honest, even with Trump winning, because of the last time he won, he did a lot of damage, but we didn't expect it to go this far. But I think what people don't realize is because of the complacency of us, the ability for us to be distracted and polarized because of our intense need for social media and constant validation and constant simulation, we've been distracted from what really has been happening, at least most of us. And all I've seen is that they've been setting up the dominoes to pretty much put black folks back into a subservitude free labor system, i.e., for lack of another term, they want to make black folks slaves again. Now, a lot of people are going to say, no, that ain't it, and that can't happen. But Trump won once, nobody thought it was going to happen, and then he won a second time. Nobody thought he would do away with these things. He did it. No one thought he could. He did it. Now, yes, there are going to be tons of lawsuits. People are already pushing lawsuits. There's going to be a lot of litigation and things that have to be fought. But what people don't realize is that is not, even with all of that, the game is not in our favor because the government now is primarily run by the Republican Party and people who are the yes men of Trump, especially in key positions, in key power. The Supreme Court, the House, the Senate, majority run Republicans. Does it get away with the Democratic Party? No, but the Democratic Party, as I think most people agree, and I could be wrong, I'm not out there polling and censusing everyone, but I think from just my interactions with most people, and this is not even just black people alone, black, white, Latino, anyone, most of us believe that even though we've always leaned on the Democratic Party because they've always spoken to our problems, that they have never or have not delivered on this to the extent that they've promised and held us accountable to. And I think that's the problem because now the ball is in their court. Donald Trump has won. He's putting his pieces in place to execute, in my eyes and in a lot of eyes of a lot of people, a fascist regime in the most powerful country in the world. Now, does that make America invincible? No, it does not. Rome wasn't invincible. No place is, especially if it makes enough enemies. As powerful as America is and as much propaganda as it has, if it pisses off the whole world, it will lose to the whole world. The reality, though, is that is going to be a long, drawn out, arduous war, and a lot of people will die. And that's scary. I think we've gotten to this place because of gaming, and I love video games, first of all. But I would say, as far as young men, especially young white men, they've done such a good job of romanticizing and whitewashing and gamifying war and genocide and murder and desensitizing us to it that they think that this is ultimately a good thing. They think this is the path to a better future, a path that's going to make America great. Understandable, because World War II was a huge money making endeavor for America. It's what propelled us to become the superpower we are today. But I think what people don't realize is, when in the history, if you try to do it a second time, that's when you lose. Um, the first two world wars were shut off by Germany. They lost. Now, arguably, because of the level of power and sophistication that America runs, it stands, even as a divided nation, that it could definitely dominate a war. But if you've paid attention at all over the last 20 years and the last few conflicts we've been into, and I hate when people say you have to be an intellectual to do this, I was like, no, you don't have to be an intellectual. You don't have to be a master's or an associate's or college degree graduate to understand some basic shit, that all the shit that we've gotten into, we've pretty much pulled out of, and we couldn't win. All our technology did nothing in the Middle East. They just waited us out. And now what we're doing is, and what I believe Trump's doing is, by declaring a state of emergency on the southern border, by making cartels, marking them as global terrorists, what is going to happen is, this is his way to create another war. And an already vastly moving in that direction global climate, which doesn't spell good for everyday Americans. Um, People are like, yeah, we should get at the drug dealers and all this. And what people don't realize is, the reason these cartels are so powerful and successful is because of America and the West's demand for drugs, because of the lifestyles that we live in that are so stressful and chaotic and economically driven. People find it hard to soberly deal with everyday life. So it's easier to manage all this with a lot of drugs. The system we created fuels the system that we want to destroy. And what people don't realize is, they figure that we can keep the system that created the drug system that we want to destroy, and somehow that by destroying the thing that feeds that system, we're going to destroy it. And we're not. Um, I'm sorry, I'm taking some time to think on this because it's coming off the top of my head. A long time ago, in my early 20s, a couple of my friends joined the military. A couple white, a couple black. And at that time, they did it because we were struggling, and it was the best way to get into economic prosperity. Now, I didn't join. In hindsight, I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, but yes, because let's be honest, they came out in a better economic situation than I was. So they were smart on that part. But my reasoning for not joining was, one, I never saw myself fighting for a country that had repeatedly told me it would not fight for me. I think for many black Americans, even though we want to claim America as our home, it has never truly felt like our home. And sometimes it's easier for the devil you know than to go seek the unknown, per se, like people who are Pan African. And I'm saying all this because I think this is a time for minorities and black Americans to really take a time to sit back and have a thought conversation among your friends, your family, among yourselves. What is the course moving forward? Do we stay and fight? Do we move? And not just as a collective community, but as individuals. We're not monolithic, but what are you going to fight for? And what do you gain out of it? I would say on an individual level, for myself, if I can make it happen for myself and my family, I'm gonna get out of the country. And the reason being is because not because I don't necessarily want to fight. It's more about what am I fighting to maintain? Will that be successful? And what do we get from the outcome? And if we are able to unify in a way that can truly be effective at protecting Black Americans and minorities as a collective, ensuring that we not only reacquire but solidify our rights and equality for us in this country right now is at its most shakiest. I'm not saying that this is a time for fear or that running away is the right answer because I don't think leaving the country necessarily is running away. Because if you understand it correctly, we can possibly be treated better in other countries, but racism is everywhere. And what our understanding of racism is in America is vastly different to what it is in other countries. We're not going to deal with the same thing, but discrimination happens everywhere for all kinds of different reasons. As much as you can go to Africa, and don't get me wrong, Africa seems like the best place for black folks to go. And the reason I say that is because the plight of Africans is either is arguably worse, but also on the level of what Americans see. And the only thing that is dividing us is the propaganda that is spewed through the media that we consume and the lack of connection because of, geography and finances. It's just not easy for Africans, one, to travel and get here to America. Uh, as you can see, most nowadays, a lot of Africans are traveling here as refugees. And because of the racism and the bigotry, they don't want them here. So they send them back. And then the few that do get here, because of the way the system racism works here, and because of the ignorance of some of the people in our own community, when the Africans get here, they are pitted against regular Americans. They are either given things that regular Americans don't give, which instead of the black Americans understanding that's not the fault of the African, but the fault of the government and the people doing it, they go after the African for it. And that's wrong. It's not the African's fault. The African left a war-torn country and came to America to better themselves. They didn't come here to steal from other black folks. I would say, to my understanding, the vast majority of Africans, most of them love and care for black people, but they are in such dire straits, and what they see on TV has given them mixed emotions about us. And then when they come here and they experience us, and I know this isn't all of us, but in this climate of such division, especially between the sexes, it's very easy for there to be discourse there, a lack of trust. And you can feel it in the air, not just among black people, but among everyone. When you go out, people look at each other differently now because they're not sure how they feel. They're not sure if you're an enemy or an ally because the world is so divided. And I think that was always part of the plan by this administration that we're into, because they realize that if we're too busy worried about the guy next to me, we're not looking up at the guys above us. And they're using that to great effect to push forward things that what I think white Americans see is going to be better for them, but what they don't realize, even though it's going to hurt the black and the minorities, it's going to hurt them too. And it's sad we're still saying this and they haven't gotten it because shit hasn't really hit the fan yet, but it's only a matter of time. I was like, if you honestly believe taking away the rights of people to not be discriminated in their hiring and jobs, what are you going to do with those people who cannot work anymore? You're going to try to make them slaves? People are going to fight back. Now, not all. I know that. Let's be honest. A lot of black people, as much as they want to tell us that we are the most violent and the most everything because of the few, and only a couple areas in this country that are doing the most, That is not how the vast majority of black folks operate. For the vast majority of us, we are peaceful. We actually avoid violence. We would prefer to earn our livings and live in peace and mind our business. But for some reason, that is not enough for us to be treated fairly. And the more I experience this, the more I realize that our ancestors, the Malcolm X and the Martin Luther Kings, were speaking the truth of we have to take this for ourselves. And what that means is we have to be unified enough and come together enough and be courageous and honorable enough, not just to ourselves, but those that oppose us, that they realize that by coming for us, it is going to be a zero-sum game, that they will not win, they will not succeed, and that by throwing all this at us, that they're going to fail. The reality, though, is that that is a lot easier said than done, because this isn't a war of men in white hoods coming to your door and burning crosses on you. This is a war of knowledge. Elon Musk runs a huge media outlet. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, they all run media outlets. A couple of them own news channels. So what that means is the people who are opposing you have the ability to control the information that we see. We have to come up with ways to communicate across states with each other, not just intercommunities, to stay up to date on what really is happening. We have to create networks that allow us to, at the speed that we currently do, are able to transfer information, either encrypted, protected, whatever, that allow us to stay up to date on what's happening at every part of the community. Because the reality is, we can't all up and move to one place for black folks. And I would almost argue that that probably wouldn't be the best way. But we do need cells of unification across the country. They need to be large enough and protected enough. And the infrastructure needs to be built. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to build something crazy. I mean, if you really think about it, the Taliban did it with Nokia phones in huts and in jungles, and they outlasted everything the United States government had. Don't get me wrong, the United States government inflicted immense casualties on these people, but they could not sustain the war indefinitely. And I would say an eternal war, that is almost an advantage for us. The reason being is because, at least on a government level, to fight internally, you're going to have, it's going to cost a lot. And you're going to have to pull forces from outside the country back into the country to do some of the stuff that you're going to do. Unless people just want to lay down and let it go. Latino people right now are trying to organize that, which is why they're saying, you don't see no one, you don't tell anyone, but, you hear about ICE. They've already sent 2 planes. I've heard rumors of 1 plane being sent back. But, ladies and gentlemen, it has begun. I don't even want to call it late stage capitalism, but for lack of a better term, the far right regime is well underway. They've been planning this for decades. They have gotten the person that they knew could polarize a country best in a position of power, and now they're laying all their cards to bear. And this is not a time to sit around and act like, this is too shocking to understand. No, it is happening. We need to collectively organize. We need to do stuff. And that is important. Educate yourselves. Look up, watch videos, read books. Do what you got to do to get a grasp on what is happening and try to figure it out. I'm doing the same. But I'll be honest, where we live, I'm isolated. There's not a huge black community here. The one thing I can do is put these videos out here and look online and try to create some type of community or seek to see people who are. And for me, my idea here is, even if we don't leave the country, that the few here, we probably should find our way to a area where we are surrounded by our peers, because that is going to be a safer environment if we are together and collectively moving forward. But we got to do some. To the honest and the true white allies, not the charlatans, because I know a lot of them are out there, but to the honest, true white allies, if you honestly believe in doing the right thing, then it should be your utmost duty or job is to appeal to your counterparts who don't believe that protecting minorities and doing the right thing is right. They will listen to you far quicker than they will listen to us. So if you truly want to advocate, if you truly want to do things that actually help us, then don't look to infiltrate whatever black people are doing, but look to, with your own colleagues, counter these people. Now, there are people doing that. There are some men who are former military, there are men who are former religious, there are men and women who are, um, from all walks of life who are trying to do this, and I applaud their efforts. Keep doing what you're doing, but I would say the other part of that is speak to, you need to speak to these people. You need to directly interface with them because you live among them. You work next to them. They trust you with the inner details of their workings because they see you as one of them, even though you may not believe the same way. And I understand, because right now, I think why it's also been so effective is because we live in a society of isolationists. The internet has done a very good job of isolating men who think outside the box or the norm, and women. If you're a person who does not agree with the zeitgeist of any political opinion, you can become very quickly ostracized. So I understand the fear of speaking up, but know that in all honesty, you're not alone. So I would say seek out those who think similarly to you, collaborate with them, and make that move to together doing that. And by doing it that way, you will be applauded. These people use a multi-pronged attack, and not a shot has been really fired yet, at least not militarily wise. Um, so we have to do the same. We have to outthink them. We have to be smarter than them. We have to be more organized, and we're already behind the eight ball. Now you hear a lot of people talking, and I'll be honest. What I hear right now, at least on YouTube, is a lot of ranting, a lot of talking, and which is good. We need the conversations, but I don't hear a lot of anything coming from the left as far as programs, coalitions, laws, anything that is tangible to the impediment of the success of this regime, to the enabling of a successful coalition or community or communities that believe in true equality and equity for every American who was born here or who became naturalized here. I understand the importance of protecting our borders, but it is clear by the execution of this plan that they don't just care about the illegal immigrants who came in here and committed violence. They're not going after just illegal immigrants here who commit violence. They're going after immigrants for the sake of being immigrants. Latinos are first. And I pose this question to the South Asian, and other communities here. Um, like the Indian, not Native American Indians, but like Indians, and all those other people. You've all faced some level of discrimination. Do you honestly believe, by siding with the people who discriminated against you, that somehow you're going to secure and win your freedom? Do you honestly believe that if they just make black people slaves, that they're going to let the rest of y'all live freely? You forget this whole race thing is a tier system. They've always wanted white people at the top and black people at the bottom. If they can't successfully deport everyone, and if they can't successfully make them slaves, what do you think happens? Just look back to World War II. Especially if they're losing. The Germans started indiscriminately gassing and killing all the people they had in camps when they knew that the war that they started was going to be lost by them. And it's not fear mongering anymore. It is dire warning that if we do not come together, if we do not understand the error of our ways, and I say the error of our ways for black folks and white folks, but it means two different things. For black folks, it means we got to stop fighting amongst ourselves. It's okay to have differences of opinion, but if we honestly care about black people, we cannot use the tactics. We cannot believe in the ideologies of our oppressors. Doesn't mean we got to hate everyone, but it means we have to understand that siding with that is detrimental to us. Whether you're a Republican black person, a Democratic black person, or neither. Because they don't care about that. And as for Asians and Indians, you forget that the reason you're even here and as prosperous as you was because of the civil rights movement. The first things they took away were protections for that. Now I find it interesting because you want to get rid of Latinos, you want to maintain the H-1B, and you also want to remove any type of protections for discrimination. That, for Indians, the people who come here and get into the tech field, and the Asians who get into the tech field, should raise some huge alarms for y'all. Pause, I gotta turn on my light, it's getting kind of dark. Alright, I'm back. Anyway, so like I was saying, that should cause some huge red flags. Because what does that mean? Now, I could be wrong, but it means that they just want to change out who most of the minorities in this country are. They feel like the Latinos are not useful because they don't have the tech industry skills that a lot of Asians and, Southeast Asians bring when they come here. And I think what people don't realize is your tech skills are important. But if you can't produce food, if you can't run these other systems, that tech means nothing. AI is growing for sure. It is super powerful for sure. And with time, it will get even more powerful to the point where it definitely surpasses anything humans can do. But that is not now. And arguably won't be for at least a few decades. So what does that mean for the time being? Especially if you're already executing the part where you're getting rid of folks. Now, I think they're doing this one because they feel like, well, they already know this is coming. They want to replace people with AI. They want to create robots to do the work that, low-income people did. So in their minds, they're like, if we get rid of the Latinos who are doing this work, because they are the fastest, largest growing population in America, and they realize that, Mexico is a neighboring border. So they want to get rid of them. Then they want to go in and try to go after the cartels because they realize the greatest threat to America in any form are the cartels. Why? Because the cartels make most of their money from America through the drug trade. They have the resources to come in and disrupt things like they do in Mexico. And they realize that there are a lot of Latinos here who are affiliated with the cartels. Um, so my understanding right now, and I could be wrong, I'm quoting other experts, that the fifth largest employer in, South America is the cartels. And they can hire at a rate of several hundred people a day. Our government military can't get that many people to come in a day. Even from people who believe in the ideologies of our current regime, they all are not trying to join the military at that rate. Um, which means that as powerful as we are, we can't replace the manpower at the rate that the Mexican cartels can. And I find that interesting because America also wants to do away with people who would defend this country to their death if they felt like they were being treated correctly. And I find this really amazing because in my mind, Make America Great Again would only work if it wasn't so racist. Because here's the thing, you're going to get rid of all the Latinos. I know y'all are going to try to enslave a lot of black folks. And once you can't enslave, y'all are going to try to kill. It's just that simple. Um, People think that militaries are the good guys, but the military's job is basically to go places and kill people in the name of the governments that they serve under. So if Trump really starts taking away the rights of black folks, we no longer have protections in our jobs so that if people want to discriminate against us, they can. They are laying the groundwork to create a system where we have no ability to earn money. And then once we no longer have an ability to earn money, they want to leave us till we're so destitute that slavery might feel appealing. This is psychological warfare and financial warfare, technological warfare, and we're in it. People don't realize it, but the war has begun. It just isn't boots on ground yet. We're already experiencing the effects of a psychological warfare. We're already experiencing the effects of financial warfare because when you take away a person's right to earn an income, that is demoralizing. Now, arguably, that will push people to more radical things. Arguably, that will push black people, a lot of them, to take up arms. It'll cause a lot of communities to come together and create programs and plans, but they're banking on the division that has already been sown into our community by their work to halt as much of the progress that we'll make. They're attacking from all sides before they put boots on ground. And as much as people are warning them, I don't think the average person, the everyday person, is aware of this. And I think for a lot of Americans, especially MAGA Americans, they think that this is good for them. But what most MAGA Americans don't realize is most of y'all are economically in the same place as black folks. The job that you hated that black person for getting, if you get it, you're not going to make that much more money. Here's the thing. You're not going to make more money if people are slaves. You need people to buy things. If you eliminate millions of people by turning them into people who can't afford, even if they are free labor, it costs money to maintain free labor. We no longer live in a South like it was, where you can go that way. Plus, it's different. You're trying to reverse infrastructure. I don't think people understand that. And I'm not. The thing is, it's not impossible. It's just that this is going to be messy. It's going to be deadly. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be messy. And it doesn't feel like anyone is really paying attention to how bad this will get and can get. Now, I hope, and I don't say pray because if I'm being honest, I'm one of the few black people who isn't a Christian or identifies with any religion. I would sadly more towards agnosticism than anything else. I wouldn't even say I'm full atheism because I'll be honest, I don't know if there's a God or not. I'd like to believe there is one, but in my own personal opinion, I don't think that it works or he works or she works like any religion says. Because if it was true, there'd probably only be one, not thousands. Um, enough said on that. But what I'm saying is, this is gonna be bad if we don't. It's gonna be bad regardless. But how bad it is gonna come down to what Americans collectively do as a whole. And I understand it's going to be extraordinarily hard because I don't think people realize what we're fighting is an addiction. We're not just fighting fear mongering, we're not just fighting hatred, we're fighting addictions. We're fighting addictions to drugs, we're fighting addictions to validation and attention, we're fighting trauma. I don't think people understand that the reason a lot of people are racist is because of what they were taught and the trauma they experienced under the people under them. If you've done any research into what'll make a lot of these people who are hard far right people is they've been broke their whole lives, even though they were white and told that they were better, they were treated poorly by the system, and for some reason they believe that that problem came because of black people, not really addressing the mental issues, the addictions, the fear, the misinformation, the lies, the trauma that they experienced. And that's why I said this is going to be messy because this is kind of a craziness. If you listen to how people talk, if you listen to how some of these people think, you realize you're not dealing with rational, clear thinking people. You're dealing with highly organized, highly radicalized, crazy people. And that's a problem because they're going to act in all kinds of ways that you can't predict. They're going to do things that you can't necessarily predict. And that is problematic. So we definitely need to come together. We definitely need to find ways to communicate beyond the internet. We need to find ways to collaborate beyond the internet and make things happen. I'm 100% a new, fresh person to all of this. I haven't fully read a book on coalition building or any of this. I'm not the best at networking. I'm not the best at any of that. I've never built a network of anything. I've just, worked, looked at things, paid attention, and just tried to live my own life, as most people have. So I understand the desire to kind of just be like, let's just wait it out and see what happens. But I'm like, probably not a good idea. So my first thing is just to start speaking, start talking about it. I was like, when you don't know better, start talking, start asking questions, start talking to people. And this is one way of doing it. And the reason being is because if enough people watch it, if enough people see it, if it gets any traction, I can very well meet people who think along the same lines and we come together and find ways to protect ourselves and our communities from what is very well coming. Now, they haven't gotten rid of our right to vote. They could very well not do that. They could be waiting till it actually, the time where it comes up and then deny it then. Or he can write an executive order. Because it's clear the man's not done writing executive orders. He's been writing quite a bit, the most any president's ever done in history. And I'm quite sure he's not done yet. I'm quite sure as long as this man is in office, when things come up where he can write an executive order to get something done that he wants done, he's going to write an executive order to get things done that he wants done. And we have to hope that if we aren't completely wiped out or destroyed or enslaved or the world hasn't fallen into World War III between now and the next 4 years, that we are able to remove him from office and reverse some of the damage that is going to inevitably be done. That is like, honestly, the best hope that during this time, that it is, even though it's going to be rough, that it is peaceful enough and that certain things have not been taken away so that we have at least some type of power legally to combat this. But I'm saying this as black folks, we might not have the ability to vote anymore. And I would say, I'm not gonna be like some other black people who get on here and hate on black folks for not voting, because I don't think people realize this. Because the reality is, nobody really, I didn't know this until recently, and I don't think a lot of people knew that that right came up for it had to be voted back in, every decade or two by our Congress, by our government. It wasn't like the right to vote given to every other minority on this continent, that once you were given it, it didn't need to be voted. You just got it. Now, what I see happening is that they haven't taken away the right to vote of Latinos, because they understand that a lot of Latinos sided with Trump. A lot of Latinos see themselves as white. That's neither here nor there. But what they don't realize is, I think that will change now because of the mass deportations, which is almost a good thing. But it still doesn't change the fact that we have to wait at least 4 years before we'll be able to make any changes. But in that time, that is more than enough time for executive orders to be passed that remove the voting rights of anyone that is not a white male or a white woman. And the reason I said white male first is because I don't think people understand, especially white folks, that this man took away two things that everyone thought mainly helped black folks. And they did, but nowhere near to the extent that they helped white women. Because of affirmative action, that protected a lot of women from any type of workplace sexual violence, especially white women. It protected white women from being punished for, having a kid on the job. And I was like, I don't think people really understood this, especially white folks. So I was like, if you're not a wealthy white person, what happens if you work in a job and now you get pregnant? You need leave because you're pregnant. And that job says, no, we want you to work. You choose not to work. Now they get to fire you. And there's no legal protections to protect you because you voted against affirmative action. What if you're a low income working white person and you get injured on the job? Now, yeah, some instances you'll probably be all right, but it's clear if you pay enough attention to history, as much as racism has come up, classism and wealth inequality is there. Poor white people don't get treated much better than black folks. But it's always interesting that they always side with racism. And because of that, they almost ensure their own downfall. I'll give you a vague example because I forgot the name of the company, but how many of you were familiar with the dining cars and trains? And I forgot, it's called Pullman, I think. Pullman Boxcar Company, I believe it was. So at the same time that slavery ended and black people were given their civil rights and freedom, this white magnate came with an idea that he wanted to create a luxury service, and that the people who were going to be the face of that service were freed slaves. So what he did was he started designing these very nice box cars, and he hired black men to go on, and they were the waiters and the butlers in the car. It paid them a lot of money. They were able to earn. They faced a ton of discrimination because they weren't seen as humans. They were seen as black servants. It basically extended slavery in a way, but they allowed the black people to at least earn a living. And for many of these black men, it was their way to earn their way out of poverty. Good thing, but they did have to deal with a lot of slavery, harsh labor, harsh work, but they dealt with it. Back then, because there were no regulations on how companies can treat their employees and how they can run their business, and in the sake of making money, the Pullman Company created their own towns and cities. So basically, and here's the funny part about this, because as racist as the white people were, they got to experience some level of indentured servitude because he didn't hire them to be the waiters and butlers on the trains. They were the builders and the engineers who built the box cars and designed the box cars. And these people got paid pretty good salaries, and they got to live in a community that was pretty much run and owned by the company that they worked for. When money got tight and they weren't making as much money, they would lower the wages of the white people, but maintain the cost of living in their apartments. Pretty much, it's weird because we're kind of seeing something like that happen more on a macro level than it was then, because that's pretty much what we're experiencing now with inflation. Rent is going up, wages are staying stagnant. Same effect though. Things are getting more expensive just to get by, but your wages are not keeping up. And what happened was the people decided to strike, but the white people didn't see the black people as part of that community. They just wanted more money for themselves. Now, what happened to that company? Instead of unifying, because here's the thing, if they unified black, white, everybody together, they could have probably created a better situation for everyone. The company may have still been here, but people would have been treated better, things would have been better. But you know what happened? The racism caused the whole country. Now, it's a combination of greed by the wealthy who run the company and the racism of the working class in the company that caused that company to fail. Because when those people went on strike and unionized, they didn't include the black folks. The black people still had to work and do the job. And that's what made the money of the train. You see what people don't realize is, as much as it was important and integral for those white people that built that train, they were not the only reason that company was successful. Arguably, they were how that company functioned to a very large degree. But what made it successful and what made it viably functional as it was were those black butlers serving the community that could afford to ride that train. And in their narrow sightedness and bigotedness, not realizing the true scope of what they were doing, not only did they shoot themselves in the foot, but they hurt other people. And it's funny because they didn't care. And I was like, that is the crux of the racism we live in. They will hurt themselves to still be considered better than us. They will destroy themselves to still be considered than us. I would say it's more a sense of pride, misplaced pride, than it is a sense of jealousy. The jealousy comes after, but the pride was there first. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you cannot wrap your head around that understanding of why things are the way they are, it's going to be hard for you to understand why certain things are happening and how to properly combat those things. You know what I'm saying? We're not dealing with rational thinking folks to a degree. Oh, they're intelligent, trust me. They are book smart, they are crafty, they're ingenious in their diabolical nature, but they are not rational in their ethos for why they do the things that they do. Because with all the intelligence and the diabolical nature of what they do, it usually only ends up helping the wealthiest of their group, but mostly impacting negatively the people on the bottom. But yet they all still run to it. And it doesn't really work in the black community, one, because we've never been on that scale. We there's no one under us to hold a light to give us some air of superiority, because we've been put at the bottom for so long. Doesn't mean we're worthless, doesn't mean we're incapable. If anything, because of how we've been treated through history, our accomplishments are more laudable than anyone else's because we had to do it with far less. It it only proves the capability that we have, that even though we are given nothing, we can make that into something amazing. We've done it time and time again. Every time we get to a certain level, they come in and wreck it. And I would say this is just another example of that, but on a far grander scale. You understand? For years, anytime a black community would come together and build something and get strong, they come in and destroy it. And the more they did it, the more people realized that it's not black people creating problems for themselves. It's this. And they realized that they had to change tactics because they realized that we are shedding too much light on the truth of what is really going on in the black community by our actions. So they started doing more covert things. Segregation in itself wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but the way they implemented that segregation was. You know, 10 years after segregation was ended, most places are still segregated. Hell, if you look at the country now, the vast majority of black and white people do not live together. Yeah, there's a sprinkling of a small group of blacks and white communities and whites and black communities, but even in that, what you experience is far different. I find it that if you're a white person in an all black community, you are far more accepted and welcome into that community than you will ever be as a black person in an all white community. Just because I've lived in both, and I know, and I've seen it, and not just me, but for many other peers. This is at this part, you can argue it, but it's a pretty immutable fact. Um, and the reason I'm saying this is, like I said, we need to be aware of how these people think and what they do. And I think to a vast majority of us on the individual level, we are. But as a collective, we are not. Because if as a collective group we were and truly understood it, we would be doing a lot more. There are channels on the YouTube. Probably one of my next videos, I'm going to try to make a list of YouTube channels that I found that I watch that I think people need to see that are talking about organization, community, coalitions, and what can be done to protect ourselves. But I also say this because I think a lot of these communities are still preaching this on an individual level. I understand being an individual because we're not monolithic is important. But we cannot win at protecting ourselves and our survival if we are so focused on everyone being an individual. We have to be able to concede some things to a community, like our blackness, because just being black is the main reason they're coming after us. Because if we were white and the same thing, they would try to make us MAGA. And that's really it. It really boils down to that. Literally that. And it's sad. Because here's the thing. There's a lot of different cultures in the white community. And they still all line up under this shit. People like to say Americans have no culture or white people have no culture. Yes, a lot of culture from white communities has been stolen, but if we're being honest, they just have culture that is vastly different to ours. And the reality is, most of white culture just isn't as popular as black culture, but they do have culture. And those cultures clash, but they always come together under the banner of whiteness. I don't know a white person, I don't think I've ever seen a white person not claim whiteness, even though historically the only reason whiteness exists is because of slavery and racism. It is so ingrained into their community. They don't know how to see past it to the individual, except for when they're among themselves. And as far as black people go, we're kind of the opposite. We are not as unified. We project our individuality outwardly into ourselves. Point blank, look at what happened in the inauguration. And what's weird is it's like, Snoop Dogg and all this other stuff. And don't get me wrong, I used to love Snoop Dogg. I used to be a big fan of his. I'll say right now, I'm no longer a fan. a lot of these people up here, I'm no longer a fan of, because of they literally the first time around said, "Nope, let's not do it. Let's not get with this person. Let's stay away from this person." And this time, they're all on it. And the funny thing is, it doesn't make sense. No one wants to explain the reason for the shift. But I understand the reason they don't want to explain that because it boils down to money. Snoop Dogg is a businessman. He runs a few businesses. He's a celebrity personality, ex rapper. His whole thing is about being wealthy and living good. He is going to take money and show himself to anyone that's going to pay. Is he selling out the black community? 100%. But I know why. And I think until black people come to this realization that our blackness has to trump our need for money, our need for validation, because it was integral to our survival, we're going to find problems. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with money. I'm not saying that we shouldn't seek out wealth. But if you sacrifice your humanity and your blackness in the name of gaining more money, that used to be okay. I'll even say it. Back in the day, even though you would get called out for selling out, you were pretty safe. You were still getting the bag, people still fuck with you. But now, it's very hard to do that and see yourself on any level of good moral standing because you understand, you're literally telling other black folks, "Oh, I'm not you because I got money. I'm wealthy, so I'm safe. So if Trump wants to pay me, let him pay me. I'm going to go make this money. All you other broke black folks," and actually, the way Snoop was saying it is all you other broke niggas. That's how he sees you. A successful black man came out the hood, but has spent so much time in affluence, he has truly forgotten that he is still a black person. And when time comes, if it does come, which I hope it doesn't, but the way things are going, it very well could, or he's going to have to face for that, it's going to be very hard for him. Um, but yeah, I've been all over the place, but yeah, this is running on over an hour. Just my thoughts. But like I said, man, we need to get together. When people start watching these videos, because I've been posting them and not anyone's really been watching them, I get it. I'm new to this. I'm not the prettiest. I don't have the best phone camera. I'm not making like some crazy content, but I'm trying. I'm learning and I'm going and I'm building. I don't plan on giving up. I'll be honest, I've thought about it, but I realize that because no one is watching right now, I need to keep doing it. Somebody, by some miracle, if there are miracles, maybe the algorithm throws me a bone one day, a couple people watch it and pick it up. And I'm gonna be honest, I know I'm getting new to this. I haven't said anything, and I know I'm not saying anything, at least not necessarily new, but I am a new voice and a new face saying I believe what needs to be said. That we need to educate ourselves, that we need to come together, that we need to stop looking for one individual leader. We don't need a black version of Trump because we've already proven that we can do the most with the least. We just need each other. We need to be willing and able to lay down our pride amongst ourselves and to ourselves. Stop trying to be the baddest, loudest, most powerful black person among other black people and start realizing that we are all in the same boat together. Just because that person may like this type of thing or believe in this type of thing, we're still all black at the end of the day. And that these people are coming for that. We are useful to them only as tools to do labor, as genetic material to enhance their own people, and for pleasure. And I, for one, see myself as a human, and I want to always be one, even if that means that I may die standing up for my humanity as a black person, because I don't want to live as anything else. Life is hard enough. The last thing I want to lose is my humanity. And I hope that goes the same for all of y'all. And I know humanity might not mean a lot to y'all, especially in this climate. Everybody wants to be like some magnet and larger than that. But at the end of the day, we're all still human. We all bleed. We all need sleep. We all need everything. And the moment we start being honest with ourselves about how strong we are, how capable we are, but also how vulnerable we are in our present state, maybe we can start getting to a place where we can start realizing that power on a larger scale by more of us and eliminating the vulnerabilities in our community to the outside world. We don't have to become black fascists. We don't have to become the direct opposite of whatever white nationalism and Nazism is. I don't believe that's the case. And I honestly don't think that is the way forward that is going to bring us the results that I think most black people want, which is just to be seen as free, legal humans with the same rights as everyone else. The same opportunities, the same rights. Does it mean that every black person is going to become the super wealthy person? No. It just means that we believe the world and our lives will be better if we are treated equally and as the same as everyone else, regardless of our economic background, regardless of our nation of our nation where we came from, our ancestral nations or our cultures, unless those are truly um, deadly or negatively impact other communities. Because the reality is that the freeing of black people has done one thing and helped to enrich this country. And I find it amazing that white people can still look at this world and understand that, you got as far as you got because there wasn't any slavery. But they've done such a good job of hiding the truth about how our government really works, about how our economics really work, by not teaching us these things in school, by not educating us properly. And now they want to do away with the whole education system and not put anything else in it. Just give it back to the states. In states where they're already the worst educated, that is not going to get any better. And if they're trying to push this whole Christian national government, guess what? A lot of people are going to suffer. Because what happens if you're Muslim, you're Arabic, Buddhist? Hell, look at you Scientology people. How do you live in a government or in a system that doesn't allow you to be anything else but Christian? Right? And I say that because I know racism is the one unifier among white people. It's the only unifier among white people. It's not money, it's not wealth, it's racism. And the reason being is because, like that example I gave before, the rich white dude was against the working class white people and against the working class black people. The working class white people did not care about the working class black people. They just cared about themselves. Not realizing that these people can be, and honestly should be, your allies, that you should treat them correctly because what you were going after would have been far more successful had you included them and treated them fairly. But because you couldn't, everybody lost. And that's pretty much where we're going. You have a radicalized, non-empathetic, very racist working class, and I wouldn't say all Americans. I are white Americans because I've witnessed and seen and spoke to a lot that are against it, but I've also witnessed and seen a lot and spoken to a lot who are covertly complacent to hide their allegiance to it. Because if you're a white person, understand and really understand what's going on, and you're fine with it. You can't call yourself not racist. You know you're not a racist. Now, I think that white people understand that being racist is evil. Some are now actually openly saying that being racist is a good thing. And I find that that also should ring alarm bells for folks because they're not afraid to hide it anymore. Which means when they're no longer afraid to hide it, that's because they believe they've already won. Now, that could be hubris, but looking at everything that is going on, they have a very good reason to believe they've already won. The man is in power, the executive orders are signed and being signed, people are starting to be deported. This is literally just phase one of the restructuring of America. And it's only going to get worse as they're able to continue to solidify, organize, collaborate, and build the systems that they want to build in place. They're going to build systems in place for this to last until something strong comes along and destroys it. Which, if we don't act and do the right things, most likely will be China. And I have nothing against Chinese people. I don't think all Chinese people are racist. But let's be honest, there's a lot of evidence that their political system, though far less violent than the Western political system, and maybe a little bit more gracious to Africans and black people as a whole, still is racist. It always starts small. And I think the reason that China is so friendly to Africa and black people as a whole is that everyone's learning from prior empires. You know, uh, you know, the Americans learned from the English and Rome, and China learned from the Western countries about how to regulate. And they took communism, I'm now shoot to socialism, which is why people hate socialism, because communism was the ruling government that manifested from a socialist party winning. And they're taking capitalism and what they like from capitalism and combining it. And I believe that's what we're going into, but it's going to be bloody and messy. Will it be better for black people in a sense? Maybe. I would say more so for Africans and the diaspora of black folks who are not in America. But for black Americans, for us, probably not so much. And not so much for us to go against China, but what I'm saying is just because we are here in America, we are at a extraordinarily high disadvantage compared to the rest of America. Yes, there are wealthy black folks. Yes, we have a lot of communities that have come up, but the number of us that is here is a fraction of the whole population. And among our small numbers, we are not united enough to do anything significant yet. And I say yet because I hope that with everything going on, that this sparks a fire on the asses of a lot of black folks, and we realize, yo, we gotta come together, and that we do. That we stop looking at each other with hate and malice or distrust in our eyes, and we start looking at each other like, you are my only true ally in this. And I understand the dubious nature and the danger of that, because there have been charlatans among us that will use this to save their own hides or gain more wealth, because they're so greedy and so selfish or so damaged by the negative sides of our own community that they don't know how to do anything else but that. So I understand that there is a threat there, but again, we haven't experienced a threat of this level ever. The closest thing we ever got was when we were freed in the Jim Crow era. And they're trying to bring that back. And in a far more highly surveilled, highly controlled world, less free world, than black and any American had years ago. The phone I'm using, the technology we're using right now, is enough for people to watch everything you do and see everything you do. They could literally suppress any video that I place, any video that y'all place. They can block it. And I don't think people realize, because they don't want to believe it because they think it's sci-fi, but if you're really watching and paying attention to how sci-fi is going, they're trying to get rid of being able to actually talk to real people. Mark Zuckerberg talking about getting away from fact checking, which was already unreliable to a degree, but now that you're getting rid of it completely instead of making it what it should have been, it's only going to get worse. And he wants to implement AI agents or actors in false accounts. Now, it wouldn't have been so bad when he said that if he wasn't showing us black fake agent accounts, but you know what he's showing? He's showing fake accounts with black faces on them. And that's a problem for me because it lets you know who they're going to target first with misinformation. Because they want to keep us divided to execute that plot of trying to make us slaves again. This is evil. What they're doing is evil. And they're just at the beginning. And I know that they're going to get some level of success because they already have had some level of success. And if we are not diligent and wise enough to see what's happening now and fight against it, and I would honestly say the best way to fight against it, if we want to stay communicating on the internet, is to develop some type of community or social media outlet for black folks to communicate on, we're going to have a problem. Because they're going to be AI run actors and agents out there that it's going to be very hard for the common person who is not at any level versed in how AI works, or any person, never mind black folks, to understand how AI works, to understand that that is a false account spewing fake shit that is probably going to be detrimental to black folks. And I'll tell you the ways that they can do that. They can create an AI that at first comes along as a leader or someone who is for the cause. This person will, speak the things that instill community, instill pride, and instill things in the black folks. But there'll always be an underlining thing that creates a division among us. It'll inspire certain black people to vote on certain things if they don't take away our voting rights, to spend money in certain places, to organize under certain banners. And what people don't realize is they are corralling you into places where they can easily control you. As good as AI sounds, what AI will do is it is a tool for control. They're going to use an intelligent artificial intelligence to manipulate people into doing what they want them to do. And it's probably going to be the hardest one to combat because with the algorithm, you didn't see a face. And usually with algorithms, you drive them. It's like, oh, I was into this. Now, say you're not far right, but you wanted to see what the opposition was saying, so now you get bombarded with far right news. If the algorithm knows you're a black person and want to change your view, they can bombard you with information that slowly skews your view to what they want you to believe. Now they put a face to it. They put a face that looks and sounds like people in your neighborhood, like your family members that sound like you. And they use those actors to push ideologies and manipulate you into believing certain things. And they already did this in the white community, which is why the rise of hate groups in the alt-right is so strong. This is what they've been doing. Maybe not so much with AI, but definitely with the algorithm. I would say white people were the test bed for its validity and its success because they were the easiest to transition because there was already an ingrained in many of them an air of superiority and an air of the other, just historically. But they're going to use that on everyone to maintain control. And that is a scary thought. So as black people, I would say we need to start creating our own venues for communication online, our own social media sites, our own forums. I know forums pretty much died about 10 years ago, but I would say we probably should start bringing them back. At least ones for us. We need our own Reddit. We need our own version of Twitter. We need our own version of Facebook. It's not just to share in our efforts to protect and police ourselves, but also to spread our joys unfiltered through the lens of imperialism, fascism, and capitalism. I know a lot of us are very much about capitalism. I see there are people that I like who are very much like Killer Mike who are about capitalism, but this system was never designed for all of us to fully be able to take advantage of it and succeed in it. It was designed to allow a select few of us to get to a level that we can project the positive proponents of it to get everyone else on board to follow it, but not to ever allow all of us to actually get to the top. Because if that was the case, we'd all be doing a lot better than we are. And we just aren't. Don't get me wrong. In this day and age, a lot more black people are doing better than they have ever done in this country. But because of that very fact, we are now running into what we're running into now with our government. So we need to create those things. I know I'm just saying this, but if I could do it, I would. I'm a 42-year-old man, and I don't have any skill in coding, and I don't have any skill in creating websites. But there are black people that do. There are black people that know what they're doing, and they should be doing this. They should be creating these systems because we need it. We need a unfiltered, unbiased, black-centric uh, social media sites that allow us to communicate freely our ideas amongst ourselves, to plan for ourselves and do whatever we need to do in order to make our lives work. I would say we need a lot of other things, but let's just be honest. What we can realistically do is we can realistically create websites that we can access as black people and stay under. Don't get me wrong, the enemy will be able to access them too, I'm sure, but I'm sure there's enough black people in tech that we can come up with systems that can protect ourselves and our communities from whatever's happening. Um, and I'm gonna say this because I don't think people realize it, but to our gang banging, drug dealing, gun toting counterparts in the black community, um, this is your wake up call to the YNs. Here's your opportunity to stop killing each other and start protecting each other. There's a lot of YouTube channels talking about the drama going on in, Chicago and Detroit. And I'm not going to get into that because I'm not from those areas. But I will say this, from an outsider looking in, these guys are literally trying to make a way out because they're creating these YouTube channels and podcasts. But a lot of them still are in that mindset of, we're going to bang and slang and bang on anybody. Well, here's your opportunity for that redemption, because these people are going to come for y'all. Y'all got guns, protect y'all communities. Y'all know how to shoot. Y'all know how to link up and go after the ops. Well, it ain't other black folks anymore. And y'all got to see that for what it is. Because the black folks ain't going to be taking away your right to vote. And I know we sit there and say, oh, it's other black folks I got to worry about. Yeah, but not anymore. Only if y'all want to. Y'all can literally realize that there's a far greater enemy out there coming for y'all than each other. And I get it, the enemy of my enemy is not always my friend. But it needs to be now if you want to survive. If y'all truly want to live, if y'all truly want to thrive, if y'all truly want to get out the game and get out of banging and get out of the turmoil, if y'all truly want to rep for y'all sets, then you need to protect your communities from the outsiders who are going to come in and try to arrest y'all, kill y'all, and enslave y'all. And until y'all can come together, because there are enough of y'all to do that collectively, then y'all would fall. What I see now is an unprecedented opportunity for black solidarity and community at a level that has not been seen prior to the civil rights movement, far be it even greater than the civil rights movement, because we literally have the means to communicate instantly across borders, across state lines. Even though we are at an economic disadvantage, there is technology there that still allows us to collab and communicate, and we just have not been using it fully to do that. We have been using it fully to make money. But the great thing is that those tools you've used to make money and gain popularity lend themselves very well to creating communities and building coalitions. So to all you Kai Sense and you YNs and you guys out here making these videos that are entertaining, realize that y'all are black too. Y'all got money for sure. Don't get me wrong. But that will not absolve you. It doesn't make you white. It doesn't make you free. And in the eyes of many people, it doesn't make you equal. You've been fortunate enough to live in a world that does give you a level of protection. And for many of them, I think they'll be, I don't want to say many, I don't know. I don't know these people personally, so I don't know what they're going to do. I'll say this. I think there's going to be a large number of them, whether it's the most or some, that are going to use their wealth to flee. I understand why. You have the means. Hell, if I had the means, I would take Neo Miles up out of here right now. And not because I don't care about black folks, but I want to make sure my family's protected. I want to make sure I'm protected. And, but at the same time, everyone can't do that. And the reason you're successful is because your community supported you. It wasn't just white folks. It was black people too that supported you. You got this far because of the mothers and the brothers and the family that were around you and supported you. So to turn around and take all that wealth and that influence and not use it to better the people who supported you, especially those who will face the same things you'll face. Maybe sooner than you'll face them if things aren't done to prevent that, but you will definitely eventually face those things unless you're fortunate to leave the country. And then for you, good luck. But you gotta understand, man, uh, we need to come together. I'm not saying y'all gotta be the leaders, but y'all have the loudest voices, the voices that are heard by millions, and you literally have the ability to use them. And I get it, if one of y'all speaks up, it compromises your money. But there's enough of you if you unify and do this. They can't get rid of all of you. It would automatically impact their company's profits. And if you can realize that y'all got to do this as a collective unit, as a collective unit of black influencers and not as individual influencers, though doing it as influencers is good, you've got to do this as a collective black influencers. Because here's the thing. You're trying to save a bag that you've already lost. You don't realize it yet. Just because they haven't come for you yet does not mean that you have not already lost it. And I tell you now, you are DOA if we do not unify. The money's still flowing because they haven't gotten organized and collected. The man just got sworn into office. But I guarantee you, in 4 years, if we haven't done anything to unify, if we haven't done anything to collectively create opposition and meaningful protections for ourselves, your wealth is going to be gone. You're only going to have what you've been able to save. You will not be accruing anymore. Now, take that for what it is. But this video is going on an hour and 40 minutes. I just want to thank y'all if anybody ever does watch it. And I say that till I start getting views. Once I start getting a lot of views, I'm going to say thank y'all for watching. But if anyone ever does watch this, thank you. Please like, comment, subscribe. Again, like I said, if you got things to talk about, talk about them. You hate me, you like me, I'm dusty, I'm not dusty. You have ideas that can help us, whatever. And the reason I say that is because we need to have conversations. I am absolutely certain that a lot of MAGA people have never really had a conversation or sat down or really ever experienced the people that they hate so much and don't realize that their hate is misplaced and misfound. So even if they want to come talk to me, that's fine. To the black community, hey man, you already know. I love y'all. We gotta do better. Please come together. But again, It's just James. Thank you. Love y'all. Be safe. Enjoy your Saturday. Black History Month is coming up. It's going to be interesting. I know for sure. Because Martin Luther King Day was probably one of the most craziest ones in history. And I would hope that this Black History Month is the Black History Month where we literally, instead of just coming out and recounting the past and the accomplishments of black people like we always do, that we come out and start going, this is a month of the start of our collective community, the start of our collective movement forward as black folks in peace and prosperity for us, and creating the systems that we need to protect our own and our people. And that is loud, and that is vocal, and that is organized. Because these people have laid out the plan, but they haven't organized. They haven't gotten it into place. It is still chaotic for them. And before World War III starts, black folks can literally be the heroes here. We have the opportunity. We could possibly be, as crazy as it sounds, we could possibly be the reason that we don't end up in World War III. That the world doesn't continue along this very destructive path that it's going down. And not just black Americans, but black people as a whole. And I would say for black people here, look up Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, the Sahel, and what's going on over there. If those people in Africa can do it, there's no reason black Americans can't do it for ourselves. These people have been militarily occupied for generations, for decades. They have been stifled from making money. They have been stifled from outside help and aid. They even didn't have their own currencies to use. They were regulated by Europe, especially France and America. And in 2025, they have come together enough and organized enough that they are fighting back. They are organizing. They are fighting for their people. And they're not doing it in greed. They're not the Captain Traoré of Burkina Faso. Look him up. That man's doing it the right way. He is putting his people before himself, and in the best kind of way. It's not in a showboaty way. He's not lying. He's literally showing people and showing the world that a man can do this without having to be the guy that has all the money and all the wealth and all the accolades. And I understand that's a hard sell for Americans, especially young ones, because we come from places of poverty. We want to see wealth in our community. But you got to understand that there's more to life than wealth. And if all you chase is wealth, you probably won't have the community and the freedom and the lifestyle that you want. And this man is showing us the way. I don't think a lot of people realize it's happening, maybe more than I understand, but he's showing us that there's a way to prosperity, freedom, and happiness for black folks. Don't get me wrong, the West is doing their damnedest to eliminate this man, and he is fighting with everything he's got, but he's still showing us the way that there's a better life that we can all be living, that we can all be doing better, and that we need to, and that we should be. So I'll just leave y'all with that. I love y'all. Thank y'all. Be safe. One love.